It is the deepest shipwreck ever found, the Samuel B. Roberts, small World War II destroyer escort, sunk during an epic battle in the Philippines 78 years ago today. Its recent discovery has spurred long-told stories of bravery, patriotism, and the underdog. It's a story about a local captain who knew the odds and knew he didn't have a choice.
It seems only fitting that in a town known for its historic naval and maritime heritage,
I'm Jim Ritchie.
They've gathered here.
You guys knew me as Dave Wendell on the ship.
Former shipmates.
I got out in '84.
Talking about their bond.
The 6 years I spent with this family was probably some of the greatest 6 years I've ever had.
It's a brotherhood.
Not only with each other, but with a group of men who served aboard a different ship decades before them.
That they had that mentality. You know, we will not surrender a ship.
It's such a famous ship, at least to me it was.
The ship was the USS Samuel B. Roberts, affectionately called the Sammy B. Her one and only captain was a junior officer in the Navy Reserve from Tacoma, whose love of the Navy at a young age set the stage for 30 years of service to his country. Robert W. Copeland would first graduate from Lincoln High School, then get his undergraduate degree from the College of Puget Sound before attending law school at the University of Washington, where he also earned a naval commission through ROTC.
So we have Rear Admiral Robert Copeland from the class of 1935, the CO of the Samuel B. Roberts.
His picture is displayed prominently on its wall of fame. The tattered flag from his famous ship evokes curiosity.
When students walk through these hallways, they can see a piece of history and they can tie it to something real and tangible.
In late October of 1944, the Japanese launched a series of attacks against U.S. Navy ships protecting the Philippines. Trying to regain a strategic foothold in the Pacific it lost to the U.S. The four-day endeavor, called the Battle of Leyte Gulf, was arguably the largest naval battle in history. On the morning of the 25th, a small fleet of U.S. ships known as Taffy 3 found itself under surprise attack by the center force of the Japanese Navy, with nearly twice the ships, which were not only bigger and faster, but had far superior firepower, including the battleship Yamato, the largest ever built, weighing more than all of Taffy 3's ships combined.
What they were up against in this Japanese battleship force, the odds were greatly against them.
The first contact came at about 6:50 a.m. as recounted by Copeland during a recorded interview.
Captain, surface radar reports they have a contact, sir, bearing about 330, about 30, 40 miles away.
Moments later,
The object on the horizon, sir. By that time, he said, it looks like the mast of a ship.
of the ensuing sea battle, Navy historian and Pulitzer Prize-winning author Samuel Eliot Morison wrote, quote, "In no engagement in its entire history has the United States Navy shown more gallantry, guts, and gumption than in the 2 morning hours between 7:30 and 9:30 off Samar." The now declassified action report tells the story. The U.S. ships could not outrun the Japanese, so they would turn and fight. At 7:35, the order was given for a torpedo attack. The Roberts scored one hit, heavily damaging one Japanese heavy cruiser. Over the next hour, she'd fire 608 rounds from her 2 5-inch guns without taking any damage. At 9 a.m., a tremendous explosion, and at 9:10, the word was given to abandon ship. She very slowly sank at 10:05.
Yeah, we found it. We found her. I see a 20-millimeter gun mount.
Earlier this year, ocean explorer Victor Vescovo went in search of the Roberts' final resting place in the Philippines, 22,621 feet below the surface.
We have found the deepest wreck in history.
306 feet of mangled metal, scars of a battle she had no business being in. Sailors aboard that day earned high praise and high honors for their effort in fending off the Japanese fleet. Commander Copeland was awarded the Navy Cross for his valor, among other unit citations. He returned to Tacoma, where he served in the Navy Reserve until retiring in 1965 as a Rear Admiral. In 1980, years after his death, the Navy launched a ship bearing his name. That's my grandmom christening the hull. I had a front row seat as she was put to sea for the very first time. It was an occasion an 8-year-old boy didn't fully grasp the enormity of. To know your grandfather was a hero. And that brings us back to Bremerton, where the crew of the Copeland is not only reminiscing about their time on board,
Your grandfather, right?
Yeah.
but honoring their ship's namesake.
Face down the battleship.
honoring his heroic actions,
with a destroyer. You don't do that.
his leadership, and the tone he set aboard the Sammy B that was also embraced on their ship.
We had people who wanted to come on the Copeland because we had a reputation on the waterfront.
A reputation for high standards on the high seas, inspired by a young Navy reservist from Tacoma so many years ago.
First off, thank you to photojournalist Eric DeRochers for a massive effort to make that story happen. My grandfather passed away just before my second birthday, so I didn't really get to know him, but continue to learn more about him and his career all the time. In fact, got an email from a retired Navy captain just today, a few hours ago, who told me he remembers my grandfather swearing him in back in 1966. Regarding the Roberts, her last surviving crew member actually passed away earlier this year, just a couple months before she was found. Now, it was, I should say, 40 years ago this week that the USS Copeland came to Tacoma. That was a shot of me at 11 with my dad and brother. My brother climbing aboard the ship right there for the first time, taking it out for a spin. One more pictures, we left the dock and actually headed underneath the Narrows Bridge. Still remember that memory. Lots that I had to sort through for this, but it was a lot of fun to tell.
Well, and if you know Greg, which many of you do, we know that you are a history buff. So what was it like to make all of these connections with your grandfather?
It's funny, when I was a kid, obviously it just didn't resonate as much. As I got older, it started to resonate more. And of course, I have these collections of things from my grandmother and things that my dad has passed me. So I have all the pictures, but to go through it again and start making even more connections and understand it, constantly learning. But
and piece it together.
Yeah,
you must be so proud.
It was a lot of fun to put together.